UFC Fight Night, Chito Vera versus Corey Sandhagen in the main event, and 13 fights on the card as always. I'll start from the bottom, work my way up to the top, predicting each one and breaking them down. Um, oh man, this is not a good way, not a fun way to start the card, that's for sure. Tamiris Vidal and Haley Cohen. There's not really much to say about this fight. It's not a high level fight. Um, the odds are wrong on here. Samiras Vidal's an underdog now. All the money came in on Cohen, which I don't know if that's telling me something, but I'm still going to pick Vidal, even if all the money's coming in on Cohen. I don't like she's not. I broke her down versus she was supposed to fight Ellen Perez, had to pull out of that fight. I just don't. I don't think she's that good. She got submitted by a 1-2 opponent. In on the regional scene, she hasn't looked good in any of her fights. Like she won a split decision over a decent opponent. But it's like she got controlled, as I mentioned the last time I broke her down. She got controlled for like 4.5 minutes of a 5-minute round in the second round of that fight on the Contender Series, and it's like she didn't really grow up in, I guess, the martial art. Like she didn't grow up doing any martial arts. She started at a late age. She makes a lot of mistakes. She's not, I guess she's okay in the striking. I don't hate her striking. She's athletic. That's probably the best thing she has, is that she's just a natural athlete. And besides that, though, I don't think she's like really anything special. I don't know what people are seeing in her to make them actually bet their hard-earned money on her to win. I don't understand how people can actually be confident in betting on her to beat Vidal, who actually has some wins via submission, a knockout in her last fight against Ramona Pascual. Well, that was a body shot, knee right to the gut. Pascal was done. Like I don't see how Cohen. I guess she could outpoint her for 3 rounds, but I'm going with the fighter that's finishing fights, the fighter that should be improving more at only 24 years old versus Cohen already at 31. I know it's in Texas. People have mentioned the hometown robbery potential that Cohen can get. That is certainly a factor, but I'm going to go with Vidal. She might even be able to find a finish here. Next up, a little bit better of a fight, but another one that I don't understand why people are so confident in Vinicius Salvador. What has anyone seen from Salvador that makes them really confident in him? I mean, he beat Shannon Ross in the Contender Series, who's not very good. Shannon Ross just got beat by Clayton Rodriguez inside of a minute, right? So say what you want, Salvador, it took him 2 rounds. I know it's like he still won. He still found the knockout, but Shannon Ross is not really that great, like really not that good at all. And before that, he's fighting 0-0 opponents. Not like he has a win over a 9-3 opponent, and then another 0-0 opponent. Loses to Jafel Filo, who's actually on the card against Makayev. He was on the card against Makayev last week. He was a good fighter. It's not a bad loss to have at all, but I just think Salvador, it's like, I think people are overrating him a little bit. They think he's like some amazing, boxer. He can grapple a little bit, but I really don't think he's that great against Victor Altamirano, who's fought the UFC level competition. Sure, it's he beats Daniel De Silva, ground and pound some. Daniel De Silva is also on the card. He's not really that good. Loses a split to Carlos Hernandez, who is pretty solid. Carlos Candelario wins a split on the Contender Series. Like, he's just been fighting pretty good competition and winning against a lot of them. And sure, he is the older guy at flyweight, and there are concerns, but I don't understand why people are so, I don't want to say so confident, but why people are picking Salvador just for the fact that he looked good against Shannon Ross, who is absolutely not on the level of Victor Altamirano. This is a huge step up from fighting 0-0 opponents, from fighting Shannon Ross type of opponents. I feel like when Salvador takes a step up, as you've seen before in his regional, like on the regional scene, he tends to, or he loses, right? He can get finished. He can get dropped. He's been dropped and knocked out before. Victor Altamirano, tough dude, scrappy dude. I could see him. I don't know if he's going to find a knockout, but I think he could take it over 3. I'm going with Victor to get it done. I think the UFC experience will help him in this fight. Maybe some of the nerves will be there for Salvador. We'll see, though. Next up is Manuel Torres versus Trey Ogden. And I'm going with the underdog and Trey Ogden. Look, and I'm not going to compare the two because they're not the exact same fighter. But Trey Ogden just fought 5 months ago Daniel Zellhuber, who was a prospect coming from Mexico, a very good, someone that can knock people out, someone that was dangerous. And Trey Ogden beat him over three, right? He beat him over 3 rounds, did what he had to do. And Manuel Torres, he's coming in off of a few knockouts on his record. Good striker. He throws really just heavy shots. Like he throws just heavy hooks is really what I see from him. He's not the most technical, but he does throw like very wide, heavy, and when you do throw wide shots and you're turning into it, they do generate a lot of power. And Torres is finding those knockouts. But I feel like Trey Ogden's just a smart fighter, right? That's the one thing you can say about him. He was under the tutelage or the coaching of James Krause. He's no longer with James Krause, obviously, because the whole betting thing, so he can't be cornered by Krause anymore. But I still feel like even without him, he's a veteran in the game. He's been in the UFC. He lost a split decision to Jordan Levitt. We've just seen Jordan Levitt win. Like Jordan Levitt's a pretty good fighter. I think people are underrating Levitt in his last fight, and I think people are also underrating Ogden in this fight. His wrestling is solid. He times takedowns very well. That's one thing he's not like the best just flat out wrestler, but he does time takedowns well. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And I think this is just a little bit too soon for Manuel Torres. I think he'll come out strong early. I think early will be his best shot of finding that KO. But I feel like as the fight wears on, Trey Ogden's just going to be too much of a veteran. He's, like I said, I do value UFC experience, good UFC experience, especially Trey Ogden. He's fought some decent competition. Sure, he hasn't fought like the very best of the best, and he's only been in the UFC for really 2 fights. So I'm not going to say like he's like a really UFC veteran, but he's still more fights than Torres. And I just think he's going to be the one that paces himself, and if he hasn't been knocked out in his career, by the way, hasn't been knocked out. So if he does stay safe early, I think he can get it done. Maybe inside I'm not sure if he'll get it done inside the distance or by decision. I could see him just winning a decision over Torres. I could see him finding the submission though, because Torres has been submitted before. Oddly enough, against very low level competition too. Got heel hooked in a minute by an opponent that's 10-9 now, was 8-7. That's like, I don't know. I mean, you got knee barred and heel hooked. Trey Ogden, jiu-jitsu black belt, can wrestle too. Like, it's a little bit of a worry here. I'm gonna go Trey Ogden as an underdog. Next up is I almost said the same one again. Next up is CJ Vergara and Daniel Da Silva. I mentioned Daniel Da Silva a little bit earlier. I'm not going to pick him. I'm picking CJ Vergara. CJ Vergara is pretty good. Daniel Da Silva is good for about 2 minutes of the fight. He has some explosive moments. He did get the back of Jeff Molina in their fight and couldn't really do anything with it. Like he has some, decent moments where you're like, oh, maybe he will actually win this fight, or maybe he'll start strong and see where it goes, and then he just falls off. His cardio is a problem. He's also getting finished in every single one of his UFC fights. He's been finished. Victor Altamirano basically quit in that fight. I hate to say it, but he basically quit in that fight. He didn't even try to he didn't really try to do anything. He was just covering up on the ground, and he was just getting the ground and pound was just getting rained down by Victor Altamirano. And he could have tried to do something. I mean, I understand, if you get rocked and you get dropped, but he wasn't even like dropped. He just got taken down and he was on his back, and he didn't attempt to try to get up. He didn't attempt to do anything. He just kind of accepted his fate. I don't like that. I don't like him getting knee barred by Francisco Figueiredo. That was very, very weird how that went down. He gets submitted by him basically right away. He puts himself in a bad position. And even against Jeff Molina, gets knocked out. It's like the guy makes so many mistakes. He's not a very smart fighter. His fight IQ is not the best. CJ Vergara, sure, he got submitted by Tetsuro Taira. Tetsuro Taira is one of the better fighters in the division, and Tetsuro Taira would finish Daniel Da Silva in the first round. CJ Vergara made it at least somewhat interesting, despite losing. loses to Ode Osborne as well, and beats Clayton Rodriguez by split, who Clayton Rodriguez, very good fighter, as I said, good prospect to look out for. So overall, CJ Vergara will have the better cardio. He'll be able to survive the he seems to be a pretty durable guy. I think he'll survive the 2 minutes that Daniel De Silva has of throwing output at him or trying to outgrapple him, and then after that, it's going to be Vergara taking over and getting the win. I think the UFC is trying to help out Vergara after giving him someone like Tyra. They're saying, you know what, you fought Tyra for us. We'll give you Daniel De Silva as a gift, and that's what it is. It really is a gift because he should absolutely win the fight. Next up is Trevin the Problem Giles versus Preston Parsons, and I'm gonna go with Trevin Giles. The line is about even, which a lot of these lines are just don't make sense to me, and here's why. I understand Preston Parsons is the younger guy. I understand that people think he can keep improving. He has a lot of potential. He just fought Evan Elder 10 months ago, and we saw what Evan Elder did to Nazim Sadikov. Nazim Sadikov is a pretty good I like seeing him on the Contender Series. I think Sadikov is pretty good, and Evan Elder was winning the fight against Nazim until the doctor stopped it. So it's like that win by Parsons over Elder. It's like it's a pretty good win, but when you think about it, Elder came in on short notice, right? And it wasn't just he came in on short notice. He came in up a weight class, not 155, came in at 170. So fighting up a weight class against Evan Elder, he won the fight. He did what he had to do. It was a good win from Parsons, but for Elder, it's like it's up a weight class, so not no harm, no foul there. But in his first fight for Parsons, that was a fight against D-Rod. I think he took that on short notice, that one, to get into the UFC. He gets basically flattened by D-Rod in the first round. His striking, that's the question I have with Parsons. His striking just isn't good enough, in my opinion, to deal with strikers that have power, or even have decent, like if they can touch him. And I don't think Parsons is going to be able to just out-grapple and out-wrestle Trevin Giles because Trevin Giles is a black belt. Trevin Giles didn't get really badly out-grappled by Roman Dolidze, who, in my opinion, Roman Dolidze is far more dangerous than Preston Parsons. Sure, the one thing about Preston Parsons is he's going to keep working. He's not going to give up on himself. But I feel like Trevin Giles, and I will say this, that fight against Louis Casse was low volume. It was terrible. I guess he's related to Trevin Jones because both of them have low output. But the one thing I will say, though, is even though he had extremely low output against Casse and it was a terrible fight, it was just boring because neither guy really wanted to do anything for the most part. At least, I think the total strikes at the end were like under 30 for each of them. But regardless of that, I feel like he will let loose against Parsons. I think he knows he has a striking advantage over. He has to realize he has a striking advantage over Parsons, and I feel like if he does, put some pressure on Parsons and try to take him out early, I think he can find success and possibly find a knockout early. I'm really not that high on press after watching Parsons. Like I said, I like what he did against Evan Elder. He looked good against Evan Elder, but again, that was an Elder making his UFC debut on short notice, up a weight class, and when he fought someone that's top 15 level, maybe not top 15, but like that kind of level of D-Rod, he got beaten in 3 minutes, just got pieced up and couldn't take the punches, just kind of got folded by D-Rod. And Trevin Giles is pretty, I'm not going to say he's extremely durable, but he's been knocked out by good competition, Dricus Du Plessis and Michael Morales. I'm going Trevin Giles to get it done. Next up is Steven Peterson versus Lucas Alexander. I'm going with Steven Peterson. A lot of these fights, it just comes down to the experience edge. And Steven Peterson has a huge experience edge, and he's actually a pretty good fighter in his own right, training out of Fortis. Last fight, went to a split decision with Julian Erosa. I value that pretty highly. I think Julian Erosa is pretty good. And then before that, beats Chase Hooper. I actually picked Chase Hooper to win in that one. He shocked me, looked really good in that one. Beats Martin Bravo. And then loses to Alex Caceres and Luis Pena. So looking through his record, I don't think Lucas Alexander. By the way, Lucas Alexander getting submitted in the first round of his last fight by Joe Anderson Brito. Uh, that was a quick submission. That was like 2 or 3 minutes into the first round. You know, I will say for Alexander, he's training at a Fusion Excel, which is a pretty good gym. I do think he's getting good looks and training with good sparring partners, especially on the feet. But it's one of those fights where it's just I'm picking the veteran, I'm picking the guy that's been in there with better competition and can mix it up well. Alexander on the feet, I feel like he could have success, but I feel like if Peterson mixes in the clinch against the cage, tries to get the fight to the mat, and really just mixes up the full MMA skill set, I think he'll have a lot of success and win this fight. I don't think he'll find the submission like Brito in the first round, but I do feel like Peterson can scrap out a 3-round decision just by, like I said, mixing it up. And I'll say 29-28. Maybe Alexander comes out strong, but Peterson, I do feel like will get the job done. And the headliner of the prelims is Daniel Pineda versus Top Gun Tucker Lutz. I'm going with Tucker Lutz. Daniel Pineda was on the sauce forever. That's my guess. That he was on the sauce forever. He got caught twice. He popped twice. I don't think he's on it now. And if he's not on it now, you're 37, about to be 38 soon. You're not on the sauce. You were on the sauce. It's definitely going to hinder your performance a little bit. He can get cracked. He's not the most. His cardio is not the best. Like all the signs are pointing to Tucker Lutz. I'm going Tucker Lutz. He did lose to Pat Sabatini, but he didn't get finished by Pat Sabatini. That's one thing I have to say. Pat Sabatini is. I know Pat Sabatini lost to who was it? Was it Damon Jackson? The Leech, Damon Leech Jackson. I think he got front kicked and then finished that way. Yeah, but Pat Sabatini is a fantastic wrestler and grappler. Just really, really good in the cage at utilizing his grappling. And Tucker Lutz, sure, he got out grappled by Sabatini, but he didn't get submitted. He hung in there the whole time. And he's beaten some decent opponents. Kevin Aguilar is his best win on his record. And I just think against Pineda, it's one of those where Pineda is going to come out strong early, as he usually does. He does have a lot of first-round wins. If you look into his record, most of his wins are coming in the first round. Beats Jeremy Kennedy, Mavleed. Those were no contest because obviously the steroids, PEDs. But if you really look down his record, he has a lot of finished wins. And I just think if he doesn't get it done early, I think Tucker Lutz will take over. And I think that's the more likely option, Tucker Lutz, to have the advantages as far as, being able to mix in the grappling, having better cardio, and even holding his own on the feet. I feel like Pineda, like I said, the juice is, without the juice, I think he's going to be a different fighter. And not only that, he's also old. So I'm going Tucker Lutz to get it done. Start of the main card, pretty. Actually, the main card's pretty good, I'll say. The main card's pretty good. Some of the prelims are kind of questionable, but to start off the main card, this is one that I was looking at, and I'm like, I really like Chidi Njokuani in this fight, and I'm going to pick him to win. I think Chidi, the only way he loses is if he gets out-wrestled for 3 by Duraev. And Duraev, he doesn't take damage very well. That's the one thing I'll say about him. He is training out of Extreme Couture, and that is one of my favorite gyms in the sport. But I feel like for him, it's not even a matter of his wrestling. I think his wrestling's good enough. I just think his striking defense and his ability to not get hit, I feel like he just gets hit too much. Or I should say his ability to not get hit isn't there, right? And when he does get hit, even if he only gets hit a few times, his eye puffs up and swells up and he can't see out of it. That's how he lost his last fight against Joaquin Buckley. His eye swelled up and he couldn't see out of it, and the doctor had to stop it. The same thing happened against Roman Kopylov. Obviously, he won that fight, but his eye swelled up in that one too. And when I look at Chidi, it's like Chidi knocks people out. Even in the RoboCop fight, I understand RoboCop beat him, but in the first round, Chidi was landing some brutal. He almost knocked out RoboCop, almost knocked him out. RoboCop had a huge cut over his eye. The fight could have been stopped. Chidi could have won that fight. And even before that, beating Dusko Todorovic, who did take him down. I will say, did take him down. But when he got back up, threw a nasty elbow. One elbow it wasn't even like he was throwing a bunch of shots. Just one perfectly timed elbow, just clipped him and dropped him, knocked him out. And then the fight before that against Marc-Andre Barriault, beat him in under 20 seconds, I'm pretty sure. Maybe even like closer to 10. Just dropped him. One punch is all it took. Dropped him, finished him with some brutal ground and pound. The guy's got massive power, huge power. And I don't think Duraev's going to be able to take the power. Duraev's been knocked out before. His eyes swell shut. He doesn't take damage well. And I don't think his wrestling is dominant enough. I think you need, if you're going to beat Chidi, you need to either have an iron chin or you need to have absolutely dominant wrestling. And I don't think Duraev's that kind of dominating wrestler. I think Chidi gets this done by probably first round knockout. Next up is Alex Perez and Manel Kape. I'm going with Manel Kape. I know there are some questions about Manel. You know, his takedown defense, he gets taken down a lot. And I agree, he does let up too many takedowns. But he does work his way to the feet a lot. And he does actually, he almost submitted David Dvorak. Off his back, he threw up a Kimura. And by the end of the round, like, there was a few seconds left on the clock. And if there was maybe 10, 15 more seconds, like, I feel like he would have broken David Dvorak's arm. Like, David Dvorak would have been forced to tap. I thought he was going to tap. I don't know how he survived that, but Kape was about to rip his arm off. Like, that was really, really dangerous. And Perez has been submitted before, obviously by Davison Figueiredo and Alexandre Pantoja. That Pantoja one, it just seemed like it was right away, just jumped on the back of Perez. It says rear naked choke, but I think it was more of a crank. I think it was more of a neck crank that he got him with. I'm going to go, I think Manel can find the finish here. I think their careers are just on two different trajectories, if that makes sense. I just think Manel, and by the way, Manel, another guy training at Extreme Couture, and as I say all the time, I say it, I said it before in this video as well. I just think the guys that he's training with, I saw a picture of him training with, I think one of the Basharats. He was training with, the guy's name is like Magomed Habib, that Olympic silver medalist from Dagestan. He's training with him. He's training with who else? Just all the Patchy Mix, like all the top guys, good grapplers, good wrestlers, good strikers, even like the Basharat brothers. Like I think he's the real deal. I think Kape's just going to keep getting better and better, and I think he will find the finish over Alex Perez. This could be a spotlight moment for him. And this is a big fight to really boost him closer to a title shot. Featured fight of the night is Andrea KGB Lee versus Macy the Future Barber. And when I first saw this fight, I'm like, all right, Macy Barber's younger. She's going to be making the improvements quicker and all this and that. But when I broke down the tape, I was like, I'm dead wrong. I got to go Andrea Lee, especially as an underdog. If she's, I know it's like the cardinal sin, betting on women's MMA. But if you guys are thinking of betting on women's MMA, if any fight, Andrea Lee, she almost flatlined Viviane Araújo, all right? First round, clips her and, drops her, or nearly drops her, or kind of does like wobble her a little bit. And then as soon as she ducks her head, she threw a head kick, nearly knocked her out cold with a head kick. She has pretty good striking. Like, her striking's dangerous. She finished Cynthia Calvillo. Like, Calvillo couldn't even make it out of the corner for the third round of their fight. Like, I think Andrea Lee's a pretty good striker. I know it's going to be, well, what about her grappling? Is she going to be able to defend the takedowns? I don't think Macy Barber is that dominating at just getting takedowns and being able to just control people on the ground. I don't think she'll be able to. I think this will mostly be a striking fight. And if you're giving me a mostly striking fight between Andrea Lee and Macy Barber, I'm going to take Andrea Lee. Like I said, Macy Barber is younger. She's going to be making the faster and quicker improvements and the more like vast improvements than Andrea Lee. But I still think Andrea Lee, just watching her last few fights, like, her striking looks really good. Like, she almost knocked out Viviane Araújo. Like almost, like, I'm talking almost flatlined her. Like, in the first round. I think her striking is being underrated here, and I think she wins this fight. I apologize. That was not the featured fight. This is the featured fight, and I get why this is the featured fight. This is an excellent, excellent fight. Nate the Train is back. Nate Landwehr versus Austin Lingo. Now, look, I'm going to go with Nate the Train. I'm going to go with Nate Landwehr, but I'm going to throw out a little bit of a caution. I don't think he should be a minus 270 or minus 300, whatever he is. I think that's extremely disrespectful to the skill set of Austin Lingo, another guy training at Fortis. I think Lingo, if Lingo has a good night, like if his cardio holds up, he has the opportunity to win the fight. Like he certainly is live in this spot. I don't think picking Nate is not a confident pick whatsoever. I think Austin is certainly, he's a younger guy, he's improving, and I know I say that a lot. Like, who's the younger guy, who's improving faster. But I feel like especially in the lower weight classes, guys that are coming into their prime versus guys that are maybe, possibly leaving their prime or at the very end of their prime, like at 34 versus 28, it's a very risky fight if you're picking Nate. The reason I'm going to pick him is just because I've seen him carry that cardio, carry that pace through 3 rounds. And I feel like Austin Lingo won't be able to withstand that pace. I feel like he's going to go the distance. I don't think Lingo is going to be knocked out or anything like that. I just feel like he's not going to be able to keep the same pace as Landwehr. I think Landwehr is just, he's a different breed as far as, he'll get hit and he might get dropped, but he's going to, unless he's knocked out, he's going to keep coming forward. He's going to keep throwing. And I just don't think Lingo at 9-1 hasn't fought in a while. I don't think he's going to be able to deal with the type of style that Nate is bringing. So I'm going to go with Nate to win. But like I said, Lingo, he does throw heavy. He has knockouts on his record, especially on the regional scene. So certainly not like, oh, Nate easily. It's a close fight, but I think Nate can do enough to win. In the co-main event, we have Holly Holm versus Yana Santos. Oh man, this is not good. 41-year-old Holly Holm versus Yana Santos. Honestly, Nate Landwehr and Austin Lingo could have been the co-main over this. There could be plenty of other. Manel Kopp could have been the co-main. I surely wouldn't have complained about Chidi and Njokuani and Duraev being the co-main. I don't think I get on name value. It's Holm, former champion. I get out of respect, and I do think she wins the fight. I'll say that. I do think she can win, even at 41. Even at 41, she signed a 6-fight contract, which she probably won't end up fighting all 6 fights because she's already 41 and a half. And I do have to be a little bit wary about picking older fighters. It seems like every time I pick an older fighter, they lose. But I feel like this one's like, all right, Holly Holm, her last fight 9 months ago against Ketlin Vieira, most people think she won, including me. Most people think she won that fight. I think she won. She should have gotten her hand raised. She didn't get her hand raised. But against Yana Santos, I feel like she's going to come in a little bit hungrier in this fight against Santos. I don't think Santos is going to be able to knock out Holm. I don't think Holm's going to be able to knock her out on the flip side. But I do feel like Holm's going to be able to win. Maybe press her up against the cage, try to take her down. I could see this. This fight is one of the most volatile as far as what I think is going to happen, but it's just Holmes fought and beaten some pretty good, better level competition than Santos is, and I think Holm, even at 41, is still wants to be at the highest level of the game, still committing herself. Sure, she's not as good as she was years ago, but I don't think she's, it's not like she's getting finished and knocked out in every single one of her fights. So I'm picking her to win. And lastly, the main event, Marlon Chito Vera versus Corey Sandhagen. And I'm going with Chito yet again. I'm on the Chito. I've been, on the Chito train for a while now. I'd say I've been on the Chito train for a while now. I've been picking up his last few fights. He's been winning. I don't understand how people thought like he knocks out Dominic. I don't understand how he keeps doing it. Is the main thing. I don't understand how he keeps. He loses the first few rounds and then he just out of nowhere finds a brutal knockout. And in theory, you would say, okay, eventually that's gonna, you're not gonna be able to find that one kick or one punch or one knee to not, really hurt someone and knock them out. But he showed against Rob Font, he doesn't need to knock you out to win. He can win a decision just by hurting you and winning the rounds by damage, right? And if you look at the opponent's faces after they fight Cheeto, they look unrecognizable. Rob Font looked like his face got destroyed. It looked like, Cheeto was hitting him with like a base. Like, that's how I would imagine someone would look after getting smacked in the face with a baseball bat 30 times, is how Rob Font's face looked after he fought Cheeto Vera. Cheeto Vera broke Dominic Cruz. He knocked him out with a head kick, broke his nose, like basically like his nose was like crooked. I just knocked out Frankie Edgar. I know Frankie Edgar at the end of his career, but still, like, when he touches people, I feel like he's one of those guys at a lower weight class, especially if you can touch someone and they're hurt just by you touching them with one punch, one kick, like every single time that's what it seems like. Every single time he lands cleanly, it hurts people. And Sandhagen, very durable guy. A lot of people may say, oh, he's not going to get knocked out. Cheeto, his run's going to end. He's just a gatekeeper. That's to me, I think that is the most ludicrous statement, calling Cheeto just a gatekeeper. He's only knocking out old guys, this and that. I think he finds a knockout here. Corey's very good. Corey's extremely good. I know he has good movement. I know good striking. He's gonna be hard to hit. But you know who else is hard to hit? Dominic Cruz. And sure, it was an older Dominic Cruz, maybe a little bit out of his prime Dominic Cruz, but it wasn't a washed Dominic Cruz. That Dominic Cruz that fought Cheeto looked pretty good. He looked good early on. He looked like he still had it. He didn't look like he was old and out of his prime. Like he looked like a good, like the old Dominic Cruz, and Cheeto flatlined him. And I think if you can flatline someone like Dominic Cruz and catch Dominic Cruz, just the unorthodox, the weird movement of Cruz, being able to knock him out like that, that's really impressive to me. And I think Cheeto will be able to find the shot on Corey, at the very least hurt him and win some rounds that way, or find a finish. The submission has been something that's been talked about as well. What happens if it goes to the grappling? What happens if these guys end up on the mat? And on the mat, I'm giving the edge to Cheeto. I think Cheeto can possibly find a submission on Corey. Cheeto's found submissions off his back before. He's had rear naked choke submissions. He's dangerous from everywhere. He's dangerous on the ground. Very, very dangerous on the feet. Like I said, I'm just going to keep riding the Cheeto train until he loses. I'm going to keep riding the Cheeto train. So I'm picking Cheeto Vera to win in the main event as an underdog. And that wraps up UFC Fight Night, Vera versus Sandhagen. Not the best card, a little bit tricky to break down some of these fights, especially some of the prelims. It's hard to really find a ton of fight tape, especially on some of the guys that haven't fought much in the UFC. But overall, like I said, main card's pretty good. Main event's going to be excellent. If you're a fan of high level, bantamweights fighting, as everyone is, I'm sure, Marlon Vera and Corey Sandhagen is one of the best fights I can imagine of. So till next time, guys, thanks for watching, and peace.